Last week, I took on making a creation that focused on using a certain device, and it went over pretty well, mostly. So, this week, I want to do the same thing, but this time with springs. Let's get to it. The thing about using springs in my build is that I pretty much never use them, and even when I do, it usually isn't great. So, I'm gonna try to create some different builds that help make this item shine. With that stated, the main thing I always associated using springs was for a form of suspension for your car builds. So, I started by trying to build a unique car with springs attached. Of course, for some reason along the way, I decided this car should be shaped like a triangle. And yeah, that made the process way more difficult. However, I did eventually come up with a design that I was pretty proud of. Not gonna lie, it did take multiple revisions to reach that point, but we can just act like I had it planned all along. Either way, the main reason that springs make your car builds better is because of the ability to get over most obstacles in your way. Mountains serve little to no hindrance to go over. That is, unless your car is shaped like a triangle. But even with that being the case, I was able to overcome most terrains that I threw this vehicle at. So, I would call that a win.
Outstanding!
Next up, I want to try making a mech that's gonna have a little bit of a spring in its step. Of course, to achieve this, I will use the body of a mech that walks on its own and replace its feet with springs, and we'll see what that gives us. And along the way, I've got to give it some personality too, so this should do just fine. Everything looks good, let's see what happens. Well, there goes the spring. At first, I was having a hard time making sure the spring stayed attached when I would activate the device, but once I got it all lined up a little bit better, it sprang to life and started walking around with no issue. So, I decided to just let it go and I would follow it and see what it wanted to do. During this process, it went walking down the hill, briefly stopping at the nearby mob camp, and then it decided to go off the side of the mountain, where it spent the rest of its time walking around in circles in the ocean. I'm unsure if this counts as a success, but it technically had a spring in its step. I figured it out. I know what I need to do to make springs the ultimate item to craft with. To achieve this, I have to combine the suspension of a car with the walking of a mech. And of course, along the way, there will be a ton of springs. To get started, I will use the bowls with a huge circle in the middle that I have saved in my auto builds, and place a spring on each of the wheels. Then, once I have all these assembled, I will connect the two halves with a rail. And of course, I'll put a control stick on here to make it all work. So, let's see how it goes. Well, it's not really the best start. It seems like the springs keep getting caught on each other. After a bit of trial and error and figuring out what was causing all the hiccups, I found out that using 2 springs on each wheel was the best solution. Also, the springs need to be placed at the 12 and 3 o'clock positions on the tire. With all that figured out, I was able to achieve some wild results as far as making this device show off its potential. Just watch as it sprints like a rabid animal down this hill. Yeah, at one point, we totally hit Mach 5 speeds there. So, I would call this device fun to use, for sure. If you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Also, leave a comment, cause I respond to those pretty often. And as always, I'll catch you next time.